Hello, my educator family. Welcome to another Strategy Sunday episode. Thank you so much for viewing last week and for sharing the video, for liking and for posting your comments. They were appreciated. I trust that you had an awesome week last week as you looked at the 3 C's and how it is that you communicated, you connected, and you also collaborated with your students as you prepare them for the world ahead. This week, in our future for the month of January, we are going to be looking at reintegration into the classroom. Why reintegration? Because we are aware that in many countries, including Jamaica here, that we now have our students back to face, and it is important that there are certain lessons that they are taught or they are reintroduced to as you prepare to teach them, as you prepare to have dialogue with them, as you prepare to get them back into the mood or the mode for teaching and learning, and for them to do their best at it as you deliver to them content each day or each week. And so as we feature this reintegration, last week we looked at the 3 C's. This week we'd like to look a little bit more closer at classroom management. I know there have been several features that we did pertaining to classroom management in the online setting, how you go about building relationships, how do you get students to become organized. All of that is very important. But this week, as we reintegrate our students, I just want to point out a few things. One of the greatest things that we can do as educators is that when we get our students back into the classroom, we haste not to just go ahead and start teaching them. We should, however, spend time to listen to them, spend time to talk with them, spend time to reintegrate them into what is it that you would want them to do. And so a bit of that groundwork would have been done last week, and even into this week, you want to still be doing that with your students as well. Now, when we think of classroom management, we think of it as a creative way, yes, a very creative way in which, or creative systems in which we can support positive behavior in the classroom. So for classroom management to be successful, there are some things that we have to follow through with. And so we're going to look at consistency, contingency, accountability, and effective planning. When we have these groundwork, when we have laid the foundation with these, then it makes it easier for us to teach our students. And in light of the integration that we need to do with our students, or the reintegration with our students, these become very critical. And so as we think of consistency, remember, we need to reinforce the rules, and we need to also let them know what is it that they will receive, that at the end of them being responding to the rules and observing the rules, how is it that it will help them in learning the content within the class time, and how to minimize wasting valuable time that they will need. When we think about consistency, we want to directly look at what is it that you do with the students each day that you meet them. What is your first 5 minutes being used for, or your first 10 minutes being used for in the classroom? Is it that you just walk into the classroom and you just head up the board and you just say, students, be quiet, I'm here? What is it that you do? Do you take them through a little psychosocial, a little activity where you talk with them, where you get to find out how their day has been going, what was the night was for them before, how many persons got to complete the assignment, what is it that they did not understand in the last class? And you may want to spend that first 10 minutes to just do a little rap session with them, and to get them on par, to get them the brains to be settled, and also their little bodies to be settled too, and be in the mind for teaching and learning. So you want to ensure that you are consistent with being punctual for class, consistent with giving them assignment, consistency in helping them to understand what is it that is expected of them, consistency in your rewards, and consistency in your punishment as well. And as you go through, in light of COVID, you have to be consistent in establishing the protocols and reminding them too of the protocols that exist and that they must follow through. When we think of contingency, Contingency in the sense of the classroom has to do with what is it that you will have in place to mitigate certain behaviors, to prevent certain behaviors from happening. So we know that if we don't get to our classes promptly, some students will become disruptive. They will become restless. They will be walking around. They will move from their desk and chairs, because it is human tendency for some that when a teacher is not around, they think that's the time for them to walk around. But in light of what is happening now, the change in our educational landscape, we cannot afford to have students out of their seats. And so there must be a plan in place. Students must know what is it that they need to do while teacher is on his or her way to class. Do they take out their books? Do they head up for you to come in? Do they go over? Is it that you tell them that each time that I have class, there's a pop quiz, even if you're not serious about the pop quiz, but it may get them into the habit of sitting. And when I say even if you're not serious, it means when I say you're not serious, it's not that you're going to turn up and not do the pop quiz. It could be that you don't grade the pop quiz as often as you should, or as the students may think that you are doing, but you don't want to promise the students something and then it is not done. So you need to have a contingency plan in place. What will happen if the classroom becomes overcrowded, especially in the high school system? Sometimes we know that some students don't turn up for the first week, first 2 weeks, but then thereafter, what is it that is in place? And I know that many schools would have had a contingency plan, so you will know as the teacher how to move forward in getting that done. You also want students to understand what are the consequences and the rewards that are related to this behavior. If when I get to class you're not seated, what will be done? What is your step? What are the steps that you're going to be taking with them? When you get them to understand that then you will get them to be a little bit more focused towards the lesson, because you have a plan in place. So we have looked at the need to be consistent, the need for a contingency, and then we need to look at accountability. Accountability is very important, educators. We need to get our students to understand that they are accountable for their learning experience. So while you come into the classroom and you teach them and you give them the activities, they need to hold up their end of the bargain and be accountable in ensuring that the assignments are done, accountable in knowing that they understand, and accountable too to say, Miss, I do not understand, sir, I do not understand, can you go over this? And it also ensure, that the students are on the right path. So when you develop that environment, and they're not going to become accountable if you as the educator don't provide that system, don't provide that support for them. So it is very important that you have a supportive learning environment in which the students know that you're holding them accountable, and there are certain contingencies in place that if they are not, these are the consequences. They must also know how to operate within the classroom and their role in the management. If someone is speaking, do not speak while they are speaking. If there's an activity going on, you do not need to be excessively loud. These are things that you will need to be going through with the students. Establish some rules. When teacher is talking, you raise your hand. You need to say something in the conversation, raise your hand and wait your turn. These are basic things that we will need to be doing with our students. Some of them, they have never been engaged since the pandemic. And sad to say, they're turning up to school to be in their right grades, and they're turning up to your classes. What do? When you have these things in place, it will make it easier for the students. And the final but most important and critical, as you think about classroom management and as we think about reintegration of our students in the physical space, and even if it is a blended approach, or even if you're still online, these are things that you will need to do. You will need to go over at the beginning of each term, each semester, each school year. These are things that you do consistently as an educator to help the students to understand their role and to understand what is expected of them as they go through the teaching learning environment. And so effective classroom has to do with your rules. What are the rules that exist? What is it like when they sit in the physical space? What will you be doing? Do you, as a teacher, do you plan for their needs, the learning outcomes, and the diversity amongst the students? Those are things that you will need to take into consideration. When you plan a lesson, do you have differentiated instruction going on, wherein there's a space in which, or a time in which a particular group is working on something, another group is working on another, and another group is working on another? Is it that you have set out in your planning to ensure that if you turn up to school and students understand an objective, or understand the two objectives that you have laid out for them to do, that you have something in place to turn to give to the students, and not just to say, okay, sit and go through your books. So you have to be effective in your planning, and a part of effective planning is to always have your lesson plan. Yes, it's a sore eye, it's a pain for many teachers, but even if you don't have a detailed lesson plan, you must have a plan of action. What is it that you're going to do? And if I'm doing this and it doesn't work out, what else can I do? So there needs to always be a plan of action as to how you are going to engage your students each day. When you do that, it makes your life, it makes the teaching environment so much easier. It is like you're going to the supermarket and you have a list of things that you need to get. It's easier for you to go through the aisles, yes? But if you turn up to the supermarket and you didn't remember to write down what is it that you don't have at home, it's going to prove challenging. The same way it is in teaching and learning. If you turn up without a plan of action, then you are going to become confused as to what to do. So here we have it, educator. So we are looking at reintegration into the classroom. And so today we looked at classroom management, and we looked at consistency, contingency, accountability, and effective planning. I trust as you go through this another week in the classroom setting, that you will be able to reintegrate the students effectively. You will help them to understand. And remember, you cannot do everything on your own. Teamwork, let the students see you collaborating. You have to connect with them, you have to communicate with them, let them see that. And remember, God is in control. You need not to have a spirit of fear, but you need to operate with care as you go through this pandemic. God bless you all. Have a great week ahead.